Greetings and welcome back to the Deadology Podcast from Pencil Hill Studio, New Paltz, New York. I'm your host, Howard Weiner, and tomorrow is Halloween 2023. So for this episode of the Deadology Podcast, we're going to have a Grateful Dead Halloween, scary jams, and final treats. The Grateful Dead played on 13 years on Halloween, 14 shows over a 13-year period. So it's fitting that this is episode 13 of the podcast. Now, if we were to dig into all these shows, this vast archive of Halloween shows, I'd probably have to go through 5 podcasts to get through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a deep dive into my favorite Halloween show, which also I believe is the very best one from 1971, Columbus, Ohio, and do a history touching kind of on all the different aspects of the Halloween shows over the years. So let's begin with Stony Brook 1970. First, the Grateful Dead did play 4 times in the 60s on Halloween, 66 through 69. We're either missing tapes or set lists, or none of these shows were truly epic. So 1970 is a good place to start, just to go through a history of what happened on Halloween. And one of the strange themes which I've noticed throughout the history on this particular date in Deadology is the final treat part. There are so many final versions of songs that were played on Halloween. I believe this is mostly just random, but it's a very unusual coincidence, and you'll see what I mean as I go through some of the final versions that were played on this date. Starting with Stony Brook 1970, it's a state university, a small gym, great place, must have been a great place to see the Grateful Dead. I saw a Jerry Garcia band there in 1983, one of the most memorable Garcia band shows. But I'm sure the people out there on Halloween on Stony Brook, the Deadheads in 1970, were not disappointed because it's 2 hot shows. The early show is the one that features the last version of a song. They played it. The Dead played an amazing triple combo to end that show. Viola Lee Blues into Cumberland Blues into Uncle John's Band. Yeah, it's as good as it sounds. Last version of Viola Lee Blues, and it's very fitting the way that unfolded. It's a shorter version of Viola Lee, and it goes into 2 of the newer songs from Working Men's Dead, Cumberland and Uncle John's, kind of like a handoff to the future, one of their early classics from 1966 from their first album, giving way to Uncle John's Band and Cumberland Blues to the future. So I know they didn't plan it out like that, but it's pretty cool how that happened. And also, I'm kind of surprised that over the years they never brought back Viola Lee. Of all the different breakout songs and songs that they brought back for big occasions, Viola Lee would have been very well received. But the last time they played it, October 31st, 1970. Then, of course, 1971 is the Columbus, Ohio show, which I'll circle back to and go into more detail on that one. And for a band that liked to play a lot on Halloween, here's the big hiatus there were no shows between 1971 and 79, which was the next time they played. So 8 years of no Halloween shows. So Grateful Dead Halloween returns October 31st, 1979, Nassau Coliseum. And Deadheads filing into the arena on that night got quite a treat as the band opened up with China Cat Rider, a very rare opener. I'm not looking at any stats right now. I think it was last done in 72 was the last time they opened a show at that. So that must have been a great thrill for everybody on hand. A very good 79 show. Of course, the next night features that super long Scarlet Fire from November 1st, 1979 in the Nassau Coliseum. Moving right along, they played another Halloween show the following year, 1980. And this one's pretty famous, the Radio City show, which was not broadcast, it was a closed circuit broadcast on the East Coast of this show. An end of an amazing acoustic electric run through the month of late September and the month of October. A lot of the songs, performances that night made it onto the Dead Ahead DVD. and just such a great acoustic set that night. And there were three songs: "Heaven Help the Fool," "Sage in Spirit," and "Little Sadie." Those were the three songs that kicked the acoustic set off, and those were the last performances of all three songs. Now let's give a little listen to "Heaven Help the Fool." Good old Grateful Dead on Halloween, locking into an acoustic groove. Heaven Help the Fool for the last time. They open up the electric set that night with a smoking Jack Straw, followed by Cold Rain and Snow. Those were definitely the highlights from that Radio City show. What a memorable run that was at Radio City and the Warfield and the Sanger in New Orleans. And then the next Halloween show for the Grateful Dead was 1983 Marin County Veterans Auditorium. And this show was stocked with great songs. Opened up Wang Dang Doodle, Brother Esau, First It Ends with a Deal. It's a tape I've listened to many times. I really enjoy this. One of the better West Coast 83 shows. And then you get a Help Slip Franklin's to open set 2, Estimated Eyes, and then the big one. They had played 2 St. Stephen's on the East Coast for Madison Square Garden, and the Hartford Civic Center broke it out back east, and they had to do it once out west. So they picked this night, Halloween, to play St. Stephen. Very cool version, well played, and it's the last St. Stephen of all time, adding Rest in Peace, St. Stephen. Amazing that in 1983 they went another 12 years without breaking out St. Stephen again. But to go along with the theme of last played tunes on Halloween, that was the last St. Stephen ever. Next year, 1984, they're in the Berkeley Community Theater for Halloween. Another fine show. It was either a 5 or 6 night run in the Berkeley Community Theater. I'm not looking at any stats. Believe it or not, I'm doing most of this show off the top of my head. So on Halloween, another last performance. Incredible that all these last performances popped up on Halloween. Last time they ever played Lazy Lightning, Supplication. And it was too bad to see that one go. That was one of the more exciting first set songs. And this version, a lot of hot jamming. Jerry goes off on the Supplication. And the problem with Lazy Lightning Supplication, at least I think this is my theory on why they stopped playing it. It's a type of song, if you don't play it 3 or 4 times a tour, you kind of lose the feel of it. In the late 70s, they played it a lot. And then when the 80s rolled around, they would be maybe once a tour at the most, starting with about 1981, 82. It definitely became a rare song to catch. And as a consequence of that, I think some of the versions began to suffer a little bit. Not that they were still desirable, they sounded great, the jamming was hot, but Weir would forget a lyric, the band's timing would be off here and there. So they just gave up on playing the combination, even though they would play Supplication jams, but the verses were done. And in essence, for all practical purposes, Lazy Lightning Supplication was done. This was the last time Lazy Lightning was played for sure. On Halloween, 1984 in the Berkeley Community Theater. Very good show that night. I think they played Morning Dew later on. First version of Superstitious. And Matthew Kelly joined the band in the first set. Following year, another Halloween extravaganza, Carolina Coliseum. And that's in Columbia, South Carolina. Let's hear how that show started out.
was walking through the streets of Soho in the rain. He was looking for a place called Leo Foots. Or to get a big dish of beef chow mein. Ooh, werewolves of London. Ooh, werewolves of London. He's a hairy-handed gent and a monkey kid. Lately he's been overheard in Mayfair. Don't mess with him, they'll rip your lungs out, Jim. But I'd like to meet his tail. Werewolves of London. Werewolves of London.
He's the hairy-handed gent who ran amok in Kent, and lately he's been overheard in Mayfair. Wow, what a treat for the people in the Carolina Coliseum that night. Space, Werewolves of London, to open up the show. And it was the first time the Grateful Dead played Werewolves of London since Red Rocks 1978. 7 whole years passed by without a Werewolves. They picked a great time to break it out again. And Werewolves was followed by Music Never Stopped on the night. So that show, October 31st, 85, got off to a spectacular start. And then the Grateful Dead didn't play Werewolves of London again until Halloween 1991. And guess where they were? London. So, of course, they had to do a Werewolves of London for the Wembley Arena on that night. It was the encore. And then, along with the theme of final performances, the Grateful Dead played their last, Werewolves of London, the following year on Halloween 91 in the Oakland Coliseum. Before circling back to that great, but by the way, those two 90s shows, excellent set lists, both Halloween shows. And before we circle back to the 1971 show, which we're going to take a dive into that second set, I got to pay a little tribute, homage to the great Warren Zevon, who's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I can't figure out why, man. Such a great songwriter, piano player, wrote great compositions, great guitarist, but somehow he is not he's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you take a look at, there's at least 50 people who should not be in there ahead of Warren Zevon. And things like that really don't matter too much. You know, nothing's at stake with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But someone who doesn't know the history of rock and roll, who may just know the Rolling Stones and the Who and may know the Grateful Dead, they may not know Warren Zevon. And they should be able to walk through that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and see Warren Zevon and say, I never heard of him. Let me go get a couple of his albums. Let me find out why this guy's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So Zevon should definitely be in there. Just think of all the great songs and albums he had through the years. Songs, besides Werewolves, you got Accidentally Like a Martyr, Lawyers, Guns, and Money, Boom Boom Mancini, Sentimental Hygiene. And so many great artists played on his albums through the years. Carmelita is another song I love. I think Linda Ronstadt covered that. She also covered Poor, Poor, Pitiful Me. So yeah, so many artists covered his songs, and so many artists came to play with him in the studio on his album Sentimental Hygiene. We have Bob Dylan came in, did a song, played some harmonica on the song, and Dylan told Zevon how much he enjoyed his songwriting. Neil Young played on that album. David Gilmour's played with him, and Jerry Garcia played on 2 songs on Transverse City, his 1989 album. So, without doubt, Warren Zevon is a legend. And now we're going to move back to Columbus, Ohio Theater. The Grateful Dead on Halloween 1971. And this was released as Dick's Picks, Volume 2. So the Grateful Dead archivist was all over this. He loved this show. And it's the only show in in the whole Dick's Picks series, which is just one CD. And it's so perfect because it's a masterpiece. The first set's very good, but this second set is just a nonstop one segment, not too long, but it's an ultimate masterpiece. To me, it's the greatest official release. One disc, if you took one disc out of all the discs, even ones that are longer than a single disc, to me, this is the one disc that stands out. I would say get this one. The second set from 10/31/71, Columbus. And Steve Silberman was interviewing Dick LaValla for prior to this, to the release of the Volume 2. And this is what Dick said. This show was like getting hit with a brick in the face. I couldn't believe it. I put it on again and said, man, I must have played it 10 times before I could talk. And I don't know if I had the same exact reaction when I first heard it, but it has stayed with me through the years. Somewhere along I heard it and heard it again, and somewhere along the line I felt like I was getting hit with a brick in the face. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. And you may wonder why. Why is this so great? Well, it starts off, it's a complete masterpiece. Set 2 starts off with Dark Star. And this Dark Star, if you could use the word tight on the money, this is maybe the only great Dark Star that fits that description. It's 23 minutes long, but it's so lyrical and just moves out beautifully, and it grips you. You know, some Dark Stars you got plenty of time to space out, and the Grateful Dead kind of go all over the place. This one is just so, it was as if the composition was written out and the Grateful Dead were playing it as it was written out. It's that on the money all the way through. Just Jerry and Phil doing individual lines that totally complement each other against all odds, and just a beautiful progression. It keeps getting more intense. Nothing is overstayed, and you wouldn't want to cut anything out. It's just perfect. You get to the singing, and it's just totally engaging. This is the type of Dark Star where if you're going to turn a non-Grateful Dead fan onto a Dark Star, it would have to be this one, because this one could actually keep somebody engaged for the full 23 minutes. It's that, everything about it. So after they get through to the verse, the playing starts getting a little trippy, but nothing, there's no superfluous jamming on it. You know, everything is very pointed. And then they go into that tighten up soulful jam. And it was always a bonus when the Dead broke into one of those thematic jams during Dark Star. It would usually either be feeling groovy or tighten up. On this occasion, it's tighten up, and for about 5-6 minutes, it's intense, man. It's so incredible. And once again, it goes to that focused, linear kind of thought process that was going on. The band's just so on this. And then after they kind of get through the tighten up progression, some more jamming, and you don't want this 110, but it's just 23 minutes of joy. But it does end, and the next song is pretty. It's incredible. They go into the first Sugar Magnolia out of Dark Star, and there's something about that combination. I mean, back in the day, Dark Star St. Stephen was it. You know, that was probably nothing beats that. But to work at Sugar Mag just works so well off of Dark Star to pull you out and pull you into a rock and roll, into the new Grateful Dead world. And the Dark Star Sugar Mags, if you look at the Europe 72 versions, you got the one from London, Wembley Arena, April 8th, Amsterdam, May 11th. I think the Copenhagen one, I believe that's April 17th. It could be the 14th, I forget. But it was just such a great connection, Dark Star into Sugar Mag. It like snapped the perfect thing to come out of Dark Star. And this version in Halloween in Columbus, excellent. Probably the best version of Sugar Mag up to that point. Sugar Mag, new song. They've been playing it a little over a year or so. And 1972 to 1974, they just killed the song. It was a ridiculous, the jams they were doing. That was definitely the golden years for Sugar Mag, and this might be the first great version. Very hot. And Sugar Mag comes to an end, and there's a brief pause where the band seems to take a collective breath, and then they go for Saint Stephen. As always, the crowd is stoked in Columbus when they go into Saint Stephen, as any crowd would be. Something about that song that always gets the crowd pumped. And Saint Stephen was performed with like a new sense of purpose, because Sugar Mag kind of took over its role, coming out of Dark Star. This Saint Stephen is insane. It's so hot, man. Just to hear Jerry and Bob doing the chord fanning, just getting hotter and hotter. An amazing version. And can you answer? Yes, I can. But what would be the answer to the answer man? Then they bop into Not Fade Away. But just to take it back to St. Stephen for a second, this is the last St. Stephen they do for 5 years. For some reason, they put it away. 1976, after the Grateful Dead's little touring hiatus, was the next time they would play it. So this is another kind of, not the final version, but at least the final version for 5 years of St. Stephen. And why they put it away, I can't get it, because they were playing this song so hot in 1971. This is really a great version, the Columbus version. But now that they got everything at the show is totally peaking, they finished St. Stephen, and man, they just jump into this Not Fade Away. And I hear so many versions where the transition goes into Not Fade Away, but there's just like such bravado in the playing, and and everybody in that band is just on top of the world like never before. And obviously they're feeling good, man. Keith Gotcho's in the band, and just the sound, everything is on like such an upswing. They got all those new songs, the Jack Straw, Comes a Time. If there's ever like a time where the Grateful Dead felt confident and felt like the wind was at their back and they could do no wrong, this around this time of the tour is when that feeling really kicked in, and you could just hear them out in front of this Not Fade Away. The way Jerry's singing it, it's almost like he wants to push Bob out of the way and take over the lead vocals. And Dick, in describing this, when it gets to the jam of Not Fade Away, Dick Latvala said, "I have to put myself in a seatbelt. I start shaking. It's so exciting." And well, I don't use a seatbelt. I just take the dangerous items out of the room I'm listening in and put them away. So take all the sharp items out of the room. I mean, it's that hot. It's crazy. Garcia goes off, and it's just hotter and hotter, and you can't even believe it. They're going to go into going down the road, but it's I think it's hotter than any Not Fade Away jam, even when they do the song in its own right without anything cutting into it. So just incredible stuff there, and Jerry's just on a roll. The band's on a roll. They make it seem as easy as unspooling yarn. And then they go into Going Down the Road, Not Feeling Bad. Going down the road, feeling bad. They were feeling bad, as in bad mothers. So yeah, they're into Going down the road. And this is just off Skull and Roses, and that's such a great version. But man, they managed to take this to like a whole nother level in late 71. This is definitely the best period. They have some great versions of it in 72, but this first period when Keith joins the band in October, they just go off on these versions. It's a very good Going Down the Road. One of my friends, when we talk about which is the best version, he always reminds me that's just a good Going Down the Road. It's not spectacular, because the rest of it is spectacular. Yeah, I think it's a way above average Going Down the Road, one that you'll be very happy with. But then at the end of this Going Down the Road comes one of the greatest little pieces of music from the Grateful Dead. I just love this segue jam so much. At sometimes in 72, and when they first came out with this combination, at the end of Going Down the Road, they would pretty swiftly go back into that Not Fade Away. It was always exciting to go back into the Not Fade Away reprise. But on this version, they found this segue jam, which is just one of the craziest things I've ever heard. At the same time, they're leaving Going Down the Road, and charging into Not Fade Away. It's impossible for a band to be at the same time playing two songs and understanding what the hell's going on, but they have this on lockdown. And I think this is the appropriate time where I just take that not going down the road, Not Fade Away segue and let you hear it. Mercy, Garcia and the Grateful Dead going wild in Columbus, Ohio, Halloween, 1971. And after that, just so creative segue jam going back into Not Fade Away. The Not Fade Away reprise is one of the wildest rock and roll extravaganzas you'll ever hear from the Grateful Dead. It's just 4 minutes of equipment bashing, wild rock and roll, Weir's going nuts, Jerry's doing these amazing riffs, and then Not Fade Away reprise. Just one of the great pieces of rock and roll you'll ever hear from the Grateful Dead. It's a type of finale that would make the Who blush. And that was the last song of the amazing segment of the Dick's Picks Volume 2, and they did a Johnny B. Good encore to finish the night off. There's so much Grateful Dead to dig into on Halloween. Take your choice. Listen to some Grateful Dead. Have a happy Halloween. And this is episode 13 of the Deadology Podcast. I'm your host, Howard Weiner. Thanks for listening. I'm kicking around a few ideas for next week's show. I think I have something in store, but whatever it is, I think I'm going to do some Garcia Band next week. Maybe do a Garcia Band, Grateful Dead double header. People seem to like that when I get a little Jerry Garcia Band involved into the equation. By the way, I got a YouTube page, Positively Garcia. You can find a lot of the versions I talked about on today's show there. My books are available on Amazon. Also, I got a website, tangleupintunes.com. My book, Deadology, the 33 Essential Dates of Grateful Dead History, goes deeper into the October 31st, which is obviously one of the 33 essential dates. And that's it. Thanks for listening. I appreciate y'all. Until next week, peace out.